I withdraw my order. And I will explain briefly. You retract your order? Mr. Wong Yuk-man, please take your seat. Mr. Wong Yuk-man, please take your seat. Sit down immediately. Mr. Wong Yuk-man, I warn you. Do not leave your seat. Please sit down, Mr. Wong Yuk-man. I would explain briefly. I reviewed the scene just now, and Mr. Chen Chi-chun, well, I asked you a number of times to stop speaking, but you didn't do so. So under those circumstances, I think you are interrupting the meeting. But I should have given you warning or a reminder. So I hope that you will not interrupt the meeting again, and we will go on with our meeting now. The next speaker is Ms. Sit Ho. You have not explained about paragraph 46. You should let all members ask questions. Let's not argue anymore. We know that members will be allowed to ask the government questions under 46 before the item is put to the vote. Well, 186 questions have been asked, and 26 members have asked over 20 times. So I think the paper has been thoroughly discussed. But of course, you cannot ask about everything. We have made reference to the practice concerning the XRL. So before the item is put to the vote, I will give each member 1 minute to ask questions. So I will do so. But the government will answer in one go. So you will have 1 whole minute to ask questions. This has been decided on. Please do not stall for time. Next, Ms. Sit Ho. Ms. Emily Lau, Chairman, if you want to refer to the XRL issue, at that time, the government accepted that members should be allowed to ask questions. So Ms. Eva Cheng talked to me. She said that we can hold 40 sections of meetings. But of course, we have to handle the problem. But there should be a basis, that is, a consensus should be forged. At that time, the secretary was willing to do so. She allowed all members to ask questions as they wanted. It was the approach at that time. Well, look at the situation now. There's such a huge outcry. How can people be convinced that we can forge a consensus? So I hope that the chairman and the pro-establishment camp can be more patient. Don't ruin the council like this. Is this a happy event to see? The Hong Kong Legislative Council is now reduced to such a state, and everybody's losing. Now, if you do not mention the XRL, then people will not be that angry. You have to refer to the practice at that time. It seems that it's was in a totally different world. Can you respect the council? Can we reach a consensus so that we can move forward? How come whenever you say something, people would raise a point of order? How can you chair the meeting? I had a discussion with you in a pre-meeting, so I hope that we can join hands to handle matters. And I do not want to start discussing with anyone here. I will give all of you a last opportunity to ask the government questions, and then we will handle the paper. Mr. Albert Chan, 1 minute. Do we all agree? Well, we all agree on the 1 minute. However, we do not agree to what you say, and your practice is different from the practice back then. We should discuss as to whether we should only be given 1 minute. I have made a decision, and I've also clarified it. As to whether you agree to it or not, I don't think I can discuss this further with you. So I've made a decision. I have taken advice from the legal advisor. Now, if you go on like this, then I can only ask the noisy members to leave. I'll give you one last chance. Ms. Emily Lau, if you're asking the same question, I will ask Ms. Emily Lau to ask the question. Well, Chairman, I already said it very clearly. That is how I handled the XRL issue at that time. In the pre-meeting, I also said this. On other occasions, I also said this. If you do not accept this, if you say that you want to listen to other people's views or opinions, is your position. But you should know that for the XL issue, we reached a consensus. And you said that we agreed at the pre-meeting. Have you made a mistake, Chairman? You should be more honest. Let us not ruin the council like this. Do you think this would reflect well on us? Why doesn't the government say anything? Let's not dwell on this. I'll give you one more opportunity to ask the government questions, and now each one of you will be given 1 minute. If you do not abide by the rule, then I cannot do anything. I can only make a decision. A point of order. Mr. Frederick Fong, please make it simple. If you ask the same question, I'm not going to let you speak. Chairman, I will read it out again. 主席在把議
Any further questions? Questions?
而家有
係雙數嚟㗎，眾數嚟㗎。
有咁多
The word question is in plural. Well, there are so many members, so that's why question is in plural. I'm not discussing this with you. It's meaningless. I've made a decision. And we will move forward accordingly. Next, Ms. Ho, if you do not speak, I'll ask the next member to speak. Chairman, a point of order. Dr. Fernando Chang, please do not raise the same question, otherwise I will not deal with it. In accordance with Rule 84.3a, I move a motion that as Mr. Ip Kwok Him has not complied with Rule 84 of the Rules Procedure. He has not declared his interest, and I asked him to leave the meeting. I have already handled this matter. Please do not repeat it. Next speaker is Sid Ho. Next. We are not voting on Rule 84. I'm not dealing with it because we have not reached the voting stage yet. I have read it. I'm telling you, we are not voting now, so we are not looking at Rule 84. Next, Mr. Ho, a point of order, Chairman. What is it? Sorry, the speaker is speaking off mic. I have repeated many times. I'm not going to repeat it. Otherwise, I'll give you a warning. I have already explained my decision to you. If you do not agree, I'm not going to argue with you. Next, Mr. Ho, if you're not going to speak, I'll invite the next member to speak, Mr. Wong Kwok Heng. Point of order. Mr. Ho. Chairman. Members, please let me speak. Mr. Ho. Chairman, the one that should be kicked out today is you. You should be the one that's kicked out of this room. Well, please ask the government questions. I will ask the legal advisor a point of order. I will make use of this minute like this. Okay, let's talk about paragraph 46. Before putting an item to the vote, the chairman shall ask members if they have any further questions. Legal advisor. So the government just makes a remark and then he can stop members from asking questions. If you look at the English version, there's an S to question. The legal advisor says that the rules are not formulated to paralyze the council, but no chairman will stop members from asking questions. 42 members still have not asked their questions. So are we depriving them of their right to ask questions? Mr. Wong Kwok Heng, Chairman, this is my time to speak. Please ask them to keep quiet. Stop speaking. I will ask the legal advisor to answer the question. Legal advisor? Chairman, on the 11th of June this year, Mr. Fernando Cheung wrote a letter to you to express his opinions. And we conducted some studies afterwards. That is about paragraph 46. And just now a member mentioned the first sentence. Before putting an item to the vote, the chairman shall ask members if they have any further questions. In the mid-90s, this was incorporated into the FC procedure. And the background is like this. Now, the FC chairman, well, at the moment, he puts an item to the vote. Then from that moment onwards, members cannot ask questions anymore. Now, some members may have not indicated that they wanted to ask questions when the chairman puts the item to the vote. That's why we included this sentence in paragraph 46. That is, before putting an item to the vote, the chairman shall ask members if they have any further questions. Well, by doing so, members would not miss the last chance to ask questions. This is the same as what we do in council meeting. That is, before putting an item or putting a motion to the vote, the president will ask members if they have any further questions. Now, whether the FC chairman allows members to ask questions, he will have to look at the actual situation. But in general, the chairman would have to make sure that every member is given the opportunity to ask questions. So that's my reply to Dr. Fernando Cheung's question. And the relevant letter has been tabled. That was during the last meeting.
Members may wish to refer to that letter. It's clear that this is for the purpose of allowing members. Well, any member can press the button to speak now. Well, the legal advisor has already told you the purpose of that paragraph or that sentence. Please do not argue about it anymore. Mr. Wong Kok Heng, Chairman, I think you should act in accordance with the rules of procedure. You should be the umpire as if you are ruling on a match. We have to develop Northeast NT to solve the problem with land and with housing. However, I urge the administration to do something, and that is after the funding is secure for the advanced works, the administration should continue to liaise closely with the stakeholders in Northeast NT, and at the same time, the administration should try all sorts of means to meet the aspirations of these people so that we can see a smooth conclusion of this particular matter. Mr. Chen Hangbang, we have had a very long meeting, and now I have an opportunity to ask the administration some questions. We believe the Northeast NT will remain. Please wait. Dr. Fernando Cheung, what point of order are you going to raise? If the same thing, I have to warn you. I'm not going to repeat anything. The legal advisor refers to his reply letter to me. He said, when a member that deliberately prolongs the proceedings of the FEs, the most reasonable approach is to have a negotiation, a discussion with the members, and then an agreement is reached on a reasonable duration. Have you done that? Have you agreed with us on a reasonable procedure and a reasonable time span to complete the proceedings? Well, I invited you to room number 4 for a discussion. That didn't come to pass. I hope you will not continue with this discussion. We've asked the legal advisor to respond to your questions. The clarifications have been made. There's no need to further clarify that. I will now invite Mr. Chen Hangban to speak. Chairman, thank you. I believe the problem with the Northeast NT project would give rise to further problems just because we have approved the item today. Because this is about advanced works only, I would like to ask the administration whether the discussion with the Northeast NT people will continue. Please don't interrupt the member who is speaking. So my question is that even with the advanced works proceeding with full speed, it will not stop the administration from getting a solution with the residents. Last time, you invited us to talk about 37A and whether we should put a matter to the vote. That's a different matter. How could you say that you ask us for discussion? Or if we could sit down and communicate, well, we would have already got a solution. Well, we can do it now. Please. The legal advisor is not saying that we must do that. We will do whatever we can achieve, but we cannot say that that's an absolute requirement. Well, the next member to speak is Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Chairman, you can exercise your power as chairman to defer the item. You should talk to the officials. And outside the meeting, you can do what Mr. Ma has suggested, and that is you try to work out through discussions and agree the procedure or time span. And then we can deal with other items first. This will be a win-win situation for all the three parties. The administration will be able to pass other items which are urgent funding proposals, and second, it can resolve the political confrontation that we are facing now, and then you can conduct the meeting in a much smoother manner. I hope you would make use of the valuable space that you can create. Defer the item. At the same time, you make the necessary arrangement for further meetings. Dr. Kwok Ka-Kay, I want to make a point of order. FC has now become a private club of you, yourself, and the pro-establishment members. This is outrageous. When did you discuss with us? Never on any occasion did you mention a discussion. That proposal of yours was on 37A. How can you now distort the facts? You are not qualified to chair the meeting. You should step down. Of course, I'm thinking, given the circumstances now, you are not going to listen to us. You are undermining the functions of this council. You should at least ask members. You should discuss with members. You said 168 members were raised, 26 members have raised questions. I've never been able to raise any substantive questions on North East NT because you did a poor job in chairing the meeting. Well, I have been raising points of order. Why don't you allow me to another 15 minutes to raise questions to the official? You can check the records. I never spent a second on the development of North East NT. I hope to put on record. I have never asked any question on the development of North East NT, and now you want to proceed to the vote. As chairman, I didn't have the chance to ask a question. Is it fair? Is that how a meeting is conducted in a fair and reasonable manner? Well, there were 4 questions according to the records. Ms. Emily Lau. Chairman, Dr. Fernando Jiang read out the letter from the legal advisor. The letter says there should be discussion with members. I think we should learn from past experience. The Secretariat should ask members how many questions they would like to raise, how much time will be needed, but you have always refused to do that. And that's why you have failed to live up to what the legal advisor has suggested. Yes, that would take a longer time, but now the time span is also long. You should allow members to raise questions. Maybe other members and the government have put pressure on you. That's meaningless. Do you think you can win the battle? How many items are there in the FC? And how many under the PWSC? How many weeks, how many months can you carry on with all these items? Mr. Ronnie Tong, I think the legal advisor will agree. There are rules and procedure are there to facilitate the conduct of our meetings, rather than to spend the amount of time which you think is appropriate and that's it. So the meeting time should be spent on things that we want to achieve, and time should be sufficient for us to raise questions and sufficient time for the officials to respond. How much can be said in 1 minute? We're just wasting 1 minute of time instead of properly raising questions to the administration, and the administration then provide an answer to us and to the public. Why do you insist on giving everyone 1 minute? I don't understand what can be achieved, what purpose can be served in a minute. Dr. Fernando Zhang, point of order. If you repeat the same thing, I'm not going to allow it. Miss Emily Lau, raise a question. Why don't you reply? It's not a point of order. Next, Mr. Peter Zhang. Why don't you answer Mr. Ronnie Tong's question? That's not a point of order. That's a question with regard to the advice given by our legal advisor. I don't think there's a need to discuss the matter. Mr. Peter Zhang, Chairman, I think members raise things with you. They expect to get clear answers from you, but you don't answer them. So it's not clear to members here. It's not clear to those who are watching the proceedings outside. So we are moving in circles. From the dialogue between you and Mr. Kenneth Leung, would you be giving 4 opportunities to talk to Mr. Kenneth Leung? I have had 4 opportunities. Well, my speeches were interrupted by the Northeast NT residents. Well, you are here to raise questions. Am I going to get 4 opportunities? According to the records, Mr. Kenneth Leung did raise 4 questions. Next, Mr. Charles Moore, Chairman. The records are wrong. I raised questions about points of order. Well, we do not require you to raise questions of any sort. It's time to raise questions to the administration. Mr. Charles Mock, Chairman. Well, after I've heard Ms. Emily Lau, I know that the previous electrical was so nice. There was discussion, there was consensus. You asked us to raise questions in 1 minute, but no one has raised questions with the administration. They have asked you questions, but you do not answer the questions. We ask you to let the legal advisor to reply, but you don't let him reply. You just make a secret calculation that you just spend 20-odd minutes, and that's it. You are not going to answer my question. Whatever I say, as long as I'm not evicted, you ask the next member to speak after a minute. And you think that's okay? How can you be chairman if you act like this? Well, you may not be happy about that. We have tried to provide you with opportunities to ask questions of the administration. Mr. Dennis Kwok, Ms. Margaret Ng, a former electrical member, wrote an article published in the Hong Kong Economic Journal and the crisis entitled "The Crisis Exposed by the Ng Leung Sing Phenomenon." Please give it to the staff. Dr. Mr. Dennis Kwok, would you like to speak? Oh no.
Does anyone else want to speak? Mr. Albert Chan. I hope the government officials, well, I would like to say something to the government officials. Well, it's really tough for you. You have been sitting here for so many days, and you have seen to what state the council has been reduced to. The chairman has to work for the Communist Party. Now, before voting, if you do not retract the proposal, then you are collaborating with the chairman, who is a member of the Chinese Communist Party, and you are working for the Communist Party in its way of governing Hong Kong. If you really want to do something good for Hong Kong, and if you really cherish Hong Kong, you should retract the paper. You have the power to do that. This is the last opportunity for you. You should do something good for Hong Kong. Mr. James Doe. Mr. Albert Chan, stop. Next, Mr. James Doe. I would like to make 2 points, Chairman. First, Mr. Albert Chan, please keep quiet. I think, well, for the SAR government now is under the reign of CY Leung, is much more barbarous than when the government was under the 2 previous CEs. Because the present CE is putting pressure on you, and he wants to turn the electrical into a rubber stamp. We are not even allowed to ask questions. If this Pandora box is open, and if you keep your attitude like this, then Hong Kong will not be stable, no matter who the CE is. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, Paul Chan and CY Leung are trying to force this on us. And the most shameful person is you. You have been dealing matters in a most unjust way. You do not handle the motion of no confidence on you, and you do not allow us to ask questions. And Mr. Kenneth Leung has already said that he hasn't even asked one single question. He should be asking questions starting with 5 minutes. You have now totally distorted the situation, and you want to force the NAN's development plan through LegCo. I really hope you can step down. Dr. Fernando Chang. Well, first of all, I do not agree that this is my last minute. You have made numerous mistakes about procedures. You don't even allow members to ask questions. And we want to move motions. You cannot deal with them, and then you suddenly suspend a meeting, and afterwards you say that you have made a ruling. And when the meeting resumes, you do not let us discuss your ruling. Now, you have accepted my 600-odd motions, and now you are going back on your words. You are not even handling those 600 motions. Now, Hong Kong people really know what functional constituencies are, what is meant by a pro-establishment camp, and how the real estate developers' interests are protected. Mr. Chen Jichin, on the 12th, the government gave us a paper, and on the 13th, we should be allowed to ask questions. But however, on 13th, 20th, and 27th, you haven't given us a chance to ask questions. Now, the government officials have been sitting here for 3 days, and now you give us this 1 mere minute to ask questions. Now, we are empowered by the FC procedures. You do not enjoy absolute power. So is it like what's said in the white paper? I can give you however much time to ask questions I like, right? Well, people will seek judicial review on this. This is not a one-off battle. If you can force this through the LegCo, don't ever come back for other funding requests. We will spend days and days filibustering. Mr. Ip Kun Yuen, I hope the administration will answer my question, and I also hope that members can all think about this. Now, if we approve the funding today, what crisis will we be facing immediately? Political crisis, social crisis. If we rush this through the council, what benefits will it bring? Are the pan-democrats crazy today? We know that different members of the democratic camp may have different positions. Most people have not taken any action here. For example, asking for a quorum. Why are we so concerned about this? Because we see the crisis right in front of us. This is a crisis created by us. Can we prevent it from happening? Chairman, please think twice. Mr. Leung Yiu-chung. Chairman, just now I asked you to respond to Ms. Emily Lau's question. Ms. Emily Lau raised the same point as the legal advisor did. We want to give you an opportunity so that this problem can be resolved, but you said that you have asked us to go to a certain room to talk about it. It's not a fact. You are lying. How can you be a counselor? And no, you are not even a chairman. How can you do things like this? And second, you said that there's no need to talk. We all know what should be done. Oh, you know what we think? You're really so smart. You know what we're thinking. You haven't even tried. It's wrong already. But now you make such a decision. You were saying that, well, you cannot do it anyway. Last time we talked about paragraph 37A. Now we want to talk about 46. Mr. Wu Chi-wai. Well, for the pan-democrats here, some of them are milder. Some people think that they are too mild. But if now you're forcing these very mild Democrats to fight against you, they are asking you to retract the proposal. They're asking you to defer it. Why? Because they do not want things to deteriorate. They do not want the conflicts to intensify. Now you have counted enough votes. You may win this tiny battle, but in the future, you will be losing many more battles. We are talking about a funding of $300 million today. It's just for the advanced work. Is it really that big a problem? It may not be, but today you should stop and think. In the future, how can you overcome the other obstacles? I want to ask the government, have you come up with a way to assure all the funding requests in the future? Ms. Claudia Mo, Hong Kong people have very clear eyes. You may win a little battle, but you will lose the war. History will remember you. History will remember what you have said. Chairman. Now you are a counselor and you should be held responsible for what you do and what you say. This is from a movie. Now we have 42 members who didn't have the opportunity to ask questions. Ms. Sidho has been asking you about paragraph 46. And many members have not asked questions about paragraph 46. Shame on you. Mr. Gary Fan, Lang Sing, I cannot address you as chairman anymore because you really are not capable of chairing the meeting, and I will not fall into the trap. That is, this is regarded as my last minute of asking questions. You have distorted the power that's given to you by the FC procedures, and the legal advisor has given you advice, but you have also distorted his advice. And Mr. Kenneth Leung asked 4 questions, and you regarded all those questions about the development of NAND. And you called a meeting with members. You just had a brief discussion with them, and then you said that Dr. Fernando Zhang has already discussed with you. And just now you also made reference to the XRL issue. Again, you distorted what happened at that time. At that time, the government had talked to the council. Next, Dr. Helena Wong. Please stop speaking. Dr. Helena Wong. Mr. Gary Fan, please stop speaking. I warn you, you should stop speaking. Mr. Gary Fan, I warn you again. Dr. Helena Wong. Chairman, I hope the government and you will defer the funding request for NAN's development because it's very controversial, and if it's rushed through the LegCo, everybody would have to pay dearly. A lot of problems are still unresolved. For the NAN farmers, they are crying. Well, for some people, land may be a commodity on which they can speculate, but land for the farmers is their livelihood. The farmers say that they do not want to rely on the government. They just want to farm their own land. Why are you ruining their small dreams? The FSEH panel was supposed to discuss Hong Kong's agricultural policy, but we didn't even have a chance to do so. So before we discuss the agricultural policy of Hong Kong, we are going to approve this? Mr. Albert Ho, what's the spirit of a meeting? It's not about raising hands. No, we should be given enough room and time to discuss, to debate, to explore, and to ask questions about everything. In particular, as legislators, this is our responsibility. Now, this is a large-scale development plan. It involves hundreds of hectares. It involves a lot of people's livelihood. It involves land users. It involves a lot of public money. Why can't we spend more time exploring it? It's not even passed by the town planning board. Why do you want to force this on us? And now you give us only 1 minute and you want to rush this through the council. Mr. Frederick Wong, we talked about, well, from the Statue Square, from Choi Yun Chun, and from our XRL, we know that there are young people in Hong Kong who are sacrificing their future for this. This proves their love for Hong Kong. They think Hong Kong is their home. So we should all sit down and discuss. We should all reach a consensus. But every time you are so rigid, you are not trying to solve the problem. You have not looked at the young people's passion for Hong Kong. If you really want to rush this through, let's go. The young people will continue to fight with the government. We will support the government. And every time when you come here to seek funding, you will see a battlefield. Have you thought about this? This will be a long-term problem.
Mr. Alan Leung, 740,000 have voted in the Occupy Central referendum, and there was a parade by the lawyers. A record 1,600 people took part. Outside this council, thousands of citizens are expressing their disappointment towards this council. When there's no rule, no propriety with this council, the community will feel shaken, and it would give rise to violent act. Let me put this on record. In respect of 37A, 39, and 46, your rulings are totally baseless. You would be subject to legal challenges in the future. Even if you pass it, it's not a good ending for you. I'll now invite the officials to reply. Chairman, I pressed the button. May I speak? Well, after members have spoken, it will be the time for the officials to reply. Point of order. Why aren't we allowed to ask further questions? I make the decision that there is an overall decision. Mr. Gary Fang, let me remind you once again, please stop. I warn you, if you continue to speak, I will think that you are misconducting yourself. I now invite the official to reply. Point of order. Point of order. Mr. Gary Fang, I've asked you not to speak because I've already made a ruling. Mr. Lee Choi-yan, if you continue to act like this, I will think that you are misconducting yourself. Please return to your seat. It's you that are misconducting yourself.
馬上翻嚟座位。如果你唔聽嘅，我而家就要裁決。你俾我哋問嘢，我咪翻嚟座位咯。而家你唔可以唔俾我哋問嘢。我哋已經係我哋嘅權利嚟。有一個會議決議。俾我哋問嘢先。如果你俾我問嘢，我咪翻埋座位問嘢咯。我哋嚟呢度啱問嘢啫嘛。我哋嚟呢度唔想同你拗嘅，我哋想問嘢㗎。主席，你就37。而家你俾唔俾我？如果俾我問嘢啊？ 你而家俾唔俾我問？如果你唔如果你俾我哋問嘢咧，我哋就翻埋位。你先埋座位，而家。
Please return to your seats.
我咪翻埋座位咯。如果唔係，你陣間主席又再嚟喎，唔係真係㗎。到我應該。唔得，而家俾我哋問嘢先。主席已經作咗決定。
I have made a decision.
由官員作答。而家唔係啊！而家由官員作答都應該俾我哋問嘢去作答。
You should allow us to ask questions.
第一樣嘢啫，主席要求問嘢啫。問剛才要繼續做落去。每一位問嘅已經問完咗。我哋問完啦，我要。
You've all asked your questions. No, not Mr. Kenneth Leung. There are more than 40 members who haven't asked questions. If you allow us to ask further questions, I'll return to my seat. Do you allow us to raise further questions? If you allow us to ask questions, we return to our seats. You have to return to your seat, and I will talk to you. Or we can have a discussion in another room. Please return to your seats. You have to return to your seats first. Please hand it to our staff. Please return to your seats, because the meeting is still. We are still in a meeting. This is still continuing. We adjourn for 5 minutes.